Tell me something, Colt, she said. Does it bother you, taking orders from the woman you can't stop watching? I picked up my clipboard. Didn't rush it. Depends on the orders, I said. She laughed. Quiet. Real. Nothing performed about it. I think, she said, stepping closer. This is going to be a very interesting audit. She had no idea how right she was. Before we begin, have you ever met someone who walked into your life wearing a name tag that set off limits and stayed anyway? Leave it in the comments, subscribe, and let's go. My name is Colt Mercer. I'm 31 years old, senior trainer at Pinnacle Athletic Club, one of those glass and chrome temples where memberships cost more than most people's car payments and the mirrors are so clean you can see your regrets in them. I've been here 4 years, built something real out of nothing, and I've never once let the job get personal. That's the part of this story I need you to remember, because everything that happened after the first Monday of May started exactly there, with me telling myself that rule for what must have been the 1000th time, and meaning it less with every passing day. I'll keep the backstory short, because this isn't a story about my past. But you need to know a few things. My father, Ray Mercer, had a stroke 14 months ago. He's in a rehabilitation center on the other side of the city, fighting his way back word by word, step by step. The bills come in every week like tides, steady, cold, indifferent. My promotion to head of training would mean a salary bump that covers his full therapy schedule without me doing the math at midnight. That's not ambition. That's love with a deadline. Now you know what I had to lose. Here's where the story begins. She arrived on a Tuesday morning in early May, when the gym still smelled like fresh air and ambition. Windows cracked open, spring light cutting through the chrome and glass. Vera Calloway, co-owner of Pinnacle's parent company, flown in from the Chicago headquarters to conduct a full staff audit. I heard the name from Sarah at the front desk before I even saw the woman, delivered in the kind of hushed tone people reserve for weather events. She fires people, Colt. Like, quietly. They just stop showing up. I filed that away and went back to coaching a banker through his deadlifts. The first time I actually saw Vera, she was already in the weight room. Blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, sharp charcoal blazer over a fitted white blouse, a tablet tucked under one arm, and a clipboard in the other hand. She moved through the floor the way auditors do, quiet, systematic, taking everything in without appearing to look at anything specific. She paused near my station, made a note, moved on. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. The room rearranged itself around her the way rooms do around people who hold power, and she seemed completely accustomed to it. I noticed two things I probably shouldn't have. Her eyes were a serious, pale gray, and when she thought no one was watching, she looked tired. That was Tuesday. By Thursday, she had a training session booked under V. Calloway, 6:30 a.m. No special requests, just a standard assessment slot. I took it because it was on my board, and because refusing would have looked worse than accepting. I told myself it was purely professional. She showed up 2 minutes early in black leggings and a pale blue tank, hair down and loose around her shoulders. Without the blazer and the clipboard, she looked younger, still sharp, still contained, but human in a way the executive version of her carefully concealed. She warmed up on the rower without being told, checked her form in the mirror without vanity, and loaded the leg press bar with more weight than I would have guessed. She trained hard. No performance, no showing off. Just work. We went 40 minutes without saying anything that wasn't about the lift. I respected that. At the end, she sat on the flat bench with her hands on her knees, breathing steady, and that's when it happened. My quads are completely seized, she said, pressing 2 fingers into her left leg and wincing. I overdid the volume last week, and they never fully recovered. Can you help with that? Everything in my body went still. The employee handbook has 11 paragraphs on physical contact between staff and members. I could recite 6 of them from memory. And above us, through the glass wall of the mezzanine office, I could see Dorian Voss, general manager, my direct boss, the man who smiled like he was doing you a favor, standing with his arms crossed, watching the floor below with the patient attention of someone waiting for an opportunity. I had heard the rumors about Dorian. His younger brother Marcus had been angling for the head trainer position for 2 years and didn't have the certifications to justify it. I was the only thing standing between Marcus and that title. Dorian knew it. I knew it. We'd never said it out loud. Now here was the co-owner of the company asking me to put my hands on her, and Dorian watching from above like a man who had just been handed exactly what he needed. I can use the percussion gun, I said, keeping my voice level. Over the fabric, clinical pressure. It'll break up the knot without any direct contact. She looked at me for a moment with those gray eyes, reading something in my posture. Then she nodded, once, and said, "Whatever works." I positioned my body between her and the glass office upstairs. I set the device to its lowest setting. I stayed on the outside of her quad, exactly where the muscle was tight, exactly as I would have for any athlete. 30 seconds. No deviation. When I stood up, I didn't look at her face. "Better?" I asked. "Yes," she said quietly. "Thank you." I nodded, replaced the device, and picked up my clipboard. My handwriting was steady. My pulse was not. And Dorian, when I finally let myself glance up, was already reaching for his phone. Rio found me by the water station 20 minutes after Vera left the floor. Rio Vasquez had been at Pinnacle 3 years, longer than most, shorter than me. He was the kind of trainer clients trusted on instinct, steady hands, quiet confidence, never louder than the situation required. We weren't close the way people who share beers are close, but we had the particular loyalty of two people who'd watched the same machinery operate long enough to understand how it ground people up. He handed me a towel I didn't ask for and leaned against the wall beside me, eyes forward. Dorian took a photo, he said. Low, flat, like he was reading a weather report. I kept my eyes on the floor. Of what exactly? You. Her. The percussion gun. Whatever angle he was working from up there, it probably doesn't look as clean as it was. He paused. I saw him do it. I set the water cup down carefully. The gym hummed around us. Treadmills, a playlist no one had chosen, the rhythmic clang of plates. Normal sounds. The world continuing as if nothing had shifted. He's going to use it, I said. Not a question. He's going to try, Rio said. Marcus has been in Dorian's office twice this week. Both times right after the board posted the head trainer review timeline. You see that notice? I had. Posted quietly on the internal portal Friday afternoon. A formal evaluation period, 6 weeks, culminating in a vote by senior staff and ownership. Clean process. Transparent criteria. The kind of procedure that existed precisely to prevent someone like Dorian from simply handing the title to his brother. Unless he could eliminate the competition first. Stay completely clean, Rio said. Nothing he can point to. No extra sessions with her. No conversations that aren't logged. If she books you again, transfer the slot to me or Davis. She's a co-owner of the company, Rio. I can't refuse her sessions without a reason. He finally looked at me. Then document everything. Every session, every cue you gave, every piece of equipment you touched. Write it down the same day. I nodded. He pushed off the wall and walked back toward the turf section without another word. I stood there a moment longer, staring at the water dispenser, thinking about my father's therapy schedule and the photo Dorian had taken from a mezzanine window and whatever story he was already building around it. That evening, after the last client had gone, I stayed late to write up session notes I usually filed the next morning. I documented the percussion gun, the duration, the positioning, the nature of the complaint. Clinical language. Timestamped. I emailed a copy to the general staff training log and kept one in my personal folder. Then I looked up Dorian's scheduled hours for the following week and made sure mine didn't overlap more than necessary. For 4 days, I managed it. I coached my regular clients, helped onboard a new member, led the Thursday group conditioning class. I saw Vera twice, once crossing the lobby with her tablet, once in a brief all-staff meeting where Dorian delivered a tight-smiled update on the audit process. She sat at the far end of the table and took notes and did not look at me differently than she looked at anyone else. I told myself that was fine. That was correct. That was exactly how it should be. Then Friday came, and she booked the 6:30 a.m. slot again. I didn't transfer it. I told myself it was because a sudden handoff would look like avoidance, would raise questions, would give Dorian a different kind of material. That was partially true. The other part, the part one didn't write in any log, was simpler and considerably more inconvenient. I wanted to see her train again. I wanted to stand across from someone who worked that quietly and that honestly, and be in the same room with it. She arrived at 6:28. Hair down again, pale and gold in the early light. She loaded the bar herself, checked her stance in the mirror with that same unself-conscious focus, and we began. We were 20 minutes in when Dorian appeared on the mezzanine. He didn't pretend to be doing anything else. He stood at the glass with his coffee and watched, and when my eyes met his from the floor below, he raised the cup in a small, unhurried toast. A message without words. I see you. I'm still here. And I'm very patient. I looked back at Vera. She was setting up for her final working set, chalk on her hands, attention fully inward. She had no idea what was forming above her head. And something about that, the unfairness of it, the quiet wrongness, settled into my chest like a stone I couldn't put down. Dorian made his move on a Wednesday. He called me into his office at 11 in the morning, which was deliberate. Midday, busy floor, maximum visibility for anyone watching me walk up the mezzanine stairs with my jaw set and my hands relaxed, because I refused to give him the satisfaction of looking rattled. His office was glass on 3 sides. Everything in it was for show, including the man sitting behind the desk. He didn't offer me a seat. He turned his monitor toward me instead. The photo was worse than I expected. Not because anything inappropriate had happened. Nothing had. But because Dorian had framed it from an angle that made clinical care look like something else entirely. My posture bent toward her. Her head slightly turned. The percussion gun cropped just out of frame. Without context, without the 20 seconds before and after, it told a story that had nothing to do with truth. Interesting morning you had, Dorian said, leaning back in his chair. I kept my eyes on him, not the screen. Routine recovery work. It's documented in the training log. Sure it is. He smiled. You're thorough, Colt. I've always said that about you. The smile didn't reach anything above his mouth. Here's my concern. Our co-owner is in this building conducting a sensitive audit. Staff morale is already fragile. If something like this gets misread by a board member, by a partner, by anyone who doesn't know you as well as I do, it could complicate things for everyone. Including the audit, I said. Including the audit, he agreed pleasantly. Which is why I think it's in everyone's interest if you request a transfer offer training schedule. Quietly. Today, I can make sure the narrative stays clean. I stood there and let the silence sit for a moment. Outside the glass, the gym floor moved below us. People lifting, running, working, entirely unaware that 2 men were deciding something that mattered in a room that smelled like recycled air and ambition. And if I don't, I said. Dorian tilted his head. Then I worry this photo finds its way to people who ask questions neither of us want to answer. Her professional reputation is considerable. A whiff of favoritism during an audit, a personal entanglement with a staff member, that kind of thing has consequences. For her, for the audit's credibility, for you. There it was, laid out without apology, the way men like Dorian always did it. Not as a threat, but as a concern, wrapped in the language of reasonableness so that you almost felt grateful for the warning. I looked at him for a long moment. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long, he said warmly. The review board meets in 4 weeks. I walked back down the stairs and straight to the turf section and did not stop moving for 90 minutes. I coached 3 back-to-back sessions on pure muscle memory while my mind worked the problem from every angle it could find. Rio caught me between clients. I told him what Dorian had said, stripped of anything that wasn't fact. Rio listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I valued most about him. He's bluffing about going to the board, Rio said finally. If he surfaces that photo, it opens a conversation about why he was photographing staff interactions from his office window. That's its own problem. He doesn't need the board, I said. He needs Vera to feel the pressure. If she thinks she's become a liability to the audit, she pulls back. She recuses herself from anything touching staff evaluations. That clears a path for Marcus. Rio was quiet for a beat. Has he approached her directly? I don't know. Find out, he said. Because if he's running the same play on both of you at once, that's not leverage anymore. That's blackmail. And blackmail leaves evidence. I didn't see Vera that afternoon. But at 6:47 p.m., as I was finishing my session notes in the small trainer's room off the main floor, my phone buzzed with an internal message from an unfamiliar extension. I heard you had a conversation with Dorian today. So did I? V. I stared at those 4 words and the single initial for a long time. Then I typed back, are you all right? 3 minutes passed. Then, I've been better. I've also been much worse. Don't do anything yet. I set the phone down on the desk and looked at the wall in front of me. Outside. The May evening had gone soft and golden through the high windows, the kind of light that made everything look more hopeful than it probably was. She knew. She was thinking. She was asking me to hold still. I told myself that was enough information for one night. But the stone that had settled in my chest 2 days ago on the gym floor had not moved, and I was beginning to understand it wasn't going to, not until this was finished, one way or another. I picked up my phone one more time and read her message again. Don't do anything yet. For words that managed to sound like both a warning and, if I was reading it right, and I was almost certain I was, something closer to a promise. The next 10 days moved the way difficult things do, slowly on the surface, fast underneath. Dorian didn't approach me again directly. He didn't need to. He had people for that. Marcus started appearing on the floor during my sessions, casual and unhurried, the way someone rehearses a role before the audition. He'd linger near my stations, offer unsolicited commentary to clients I was mid-set with, laugh a little too loudly at nothing in particular. It was performance, and it was meant to be seen. By clients, by staff, by anyone compiling an impression of who belonged in this building and who was quietly becoming a problem. Rio noticed. Marcus clocked 40 minutes on the floor today, he told me Friday morning. He doesn't have a single client until noon. I know, I said. You're handling it well, Rio said, which from him was the equivalent of a speech. I train my clients. I documented everything. I taught a mobility clinic on Thursday evening that ran long because 3 people had genuine questions and I wasn't going to cut them short to manage optics. Afterward, Sarah from the front desk told me 11 members had specifically requested me by name on the feedback form that week. I wrote that down too. Vera and I didn't speak directly during those 10 days. Not because the connection had cooled. If anything, the restraint was its own kind of charge, the way a held breath is more present than an easy one. We exchanged 3 more internal messages, short and careful, stripped of anything Dorian could use. She was building something on her end. I could feel it in the precision of her silence. Then on a Thursday evening, when the gym had emptied down to its last few members and the cleaning crew was starting their slow circuit of the floor, she appeared at the edge of the training area. No tablet, no blazer, just the blue tank and the ponytail, the version of her I was most dangerously comfortable with. Walk with me, she said quietly. We went to the stretching area at the far end of the floor, away from the cameras positioned at the main entrances, not hidden, but peripheral, the blind spot every building has if you know where to look. She sat cross-legged on the mat like she'd been there 100 times. I sat across from her. He went to my brother, she said. I went still. Dorian, 3 days ago, sent the photo with a note. Framed it as a welfare concern. Said he'd observed what appeared to be an inappropriate relationship developing between a staff member and a company executive during an active audit. Used that exact language. Her voice was even, but her hands in her lap were pressed flat against her knees. My brother called me. He was calm about it, which meant he was worried. What did you tell him? The truth, she said. All of it. The session, the percussion gun, the documentation you filed, the messages Dorian sent me afterward. I told him Dorian has a brother position for your role and a clear motive to remove you from the running. She paused. My brother is a fair man. He's not going to act on a photo without a full picture. But Colt. It was the first time she'd used my name without the buffer of professional distance around it. It landed differently than I expected. The board is watching this audit closely. If Dorian keeps escalating, if this becomes a story instead of a fact, it doesn't matter what the truth is. Perception moves faster. I know, I said. I don't want you to lose this, she said. The words were careful, measured, but underneath them was something unguarded that she hadn't shown me before. You've built something here that's real. Your clients trust you. Your staff respects you. That doesn't come from politics, it comes from work, and I've watched you do it every single day I've been in this building. The May evening pressed soft and golden through the high windows above us. Outside, the city moved. In here, something was shifting that I didn't have professional language for anymore. Vera, I said, whatever you're building against Dorian, be careful how much of yourself you put into it. If it looks like you're protecting me personally, he'll use that too. She looked at me for a long moment. I'm aware of the risk. That's not an answer. No, she said quietly. It isn't. And then she almost smiled. Not the controlled, executive version, but something smaller and more honest that came and went like light through a moving cloud. She stood, brushed off her leggings, and picked up her bag. Before she turned to go, she looked back once, and the look carried everything neither of us had said and weren't going to say. Not here, not yet, not while Dorian still held his position and his phone and his photograph. I sat on the mat after she left and stared at the ceiling for a while. The cleaning crew's equipment hummed somewhere behind me. I had come into this spring with one clear goal: earn the title cleanly, keep my father's therapy funded, stay out of other people's storms. What I hadn't planned for was a woman who walked into my gym with a clipboard and a wall around her heart, and then, without any apparent effort, started taking the wall apart brick by brick just by being exactly who she was. I went home that night and did something I almost never do. I sat on my couch without the television on, without my phone, without any noise at all. I sat with the situation and I let it be complicated. By morning, I had made a decision. It wasn't the cautious one. I submitted my resignation on a Friday morning, 9 days before the review board was scheduled to meet. I want to be clear about something, because this part matters. I didn't quit out of defeat. I didn't quit because Dorian had broken me, or because I believed his version of events had more weight than mine. I quit because I'd spent 4 days turning the situation over from every angle available to me. And I kept arriving at the same conclusion. As long as I was in the building, Dorian had a target. And as long as Dorian had a target, Vera was caught in the crossfire of something that was never supposed to involve her. The photo existed. The narrative he'd built around it existed. The only way to dismantle a weapon is to remove what it's aimed at. So I wrote a clean, professional letter. I thanked the club, cited personal reasons, gave 2 weeks' notice, and walked it to HR before the morning rush hit the floor. Rio found out within the hour. He came to me in the trainer's room, closed the door, and looked at me the way people look at someone who has done something that cost them. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," I said. "That's why it works." He stood there a moment longer, then nodded once, slow and final, the way he did when an argument was over. "For what it's worth," he said, "this floor is going to be considerably worse without you." He put his hand on my shoulder briefly, then walked out. We didn't make it sentimental. That would have been wrong for both of us. I finished my shift. I coached my clients with the same attention I always had. Heels down, chest up, breathe through it, trust the process. I shook hands with the regulars who'd heard something was changing. I didn't explain. I smiled when it was genuine and stayed quiet when it wasn't. At the end of the day, I cleared my locker, turned in my floor keycard, and walked out into a cool May evening with nothing resolved and nothing certain except that I had done the one honest thing left available to me. I went home and waited. For 6 days I heard nothing from Vera. No internal messages. My account had been deactivated with the resignation. No calls, no texts. I started looking at job listings. I visited my father on Tuesday and sat with him for 2 hours, and when he asked how work was going, I told him things were in transition, which was true enough. He nodded like he understood more than I'd said. Fathers often do. On the 7th night it rained. That specific kind of spring rain that comes in heavy and warm and smells like something ending and something else beginning at the same time. I was sitting on my couch with a job application half finished on my laptop when the knock came. I opened the door. Vera stood in the hallway in a tan coat, soaked completely through, rain still falling behind her, hair loose and dark with water against her shoulders. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold. Her eyes were blazing with something that walked the precise line between fury and relief. "You absolute idiot," she said. "Hello, Vera," I said. She walked in without waiting. Water dripped from her coat onto my floor. She turned and faced me in my small hallway, and I could see she'd been carrying something heavy for days and had finally put it down just long enough to get here. "I fired Dorian," she said. "The same afternoon you left. I pulled every camera angle, every internal message, every staff chat log. HR has a complete file. The board met yesterday, and they are handling his brother separately." She paused, breathing. "The blackmail is documented. His own messages documented it. He was not careful because he didn't think anyone would look." "They always forget that," I said quietly. "I told my brother everything," she continued. "I told him you were the only person in that building who did the right thing consistently, even when it cost you. I told him that if the board let you walk away over a cropped photograph taken by a man with a motive, then this company deserved exactly the leadership it was settling for." Her voice didn't waver once. He listened. The rain hit the window behind me. My apartment was very quiet. Vera, I said, you risked your position in the audit. Your credibility with the board. I know what I risked, she said. I also know that I have spent 4 years choosing safety over honesty in every room I walked into. Smaller versions of this. Easier versions. She took a step closer. Her coat was still dripping. She didn't seem to notice. I'm finished with that. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had walked into my gym 6 weeks ago armored in blazers and clipboards and careful professional distance, and who was standing in my hallway now soaking wet and completely unguarded and more herself than I had ever seen her. My legs are sore, she said, and a smile broke through, small, real, slightly undone. I laughed. It started low in my chest and shook loose something I hadn't realized I'd been holding. She laughed too, and for a moment the apartment was full of it, warm against the rain. I hung her coat in the hallway. We sat on my couch and she told me the rest, the board's reaction, the legal department's response, the timeline. I listened and asked the right questions, and at some point the professional distance that had governed every interaction between us since early May dissolved entirely, quietly, without ceremony, like ice in warm water. 6 weeks later, I walked back onto the gym floor with a new title on my shirt. Head of Training. Voted on by senior staff and ownership. Vera recused from the room entirely. Her brother called me personally to deliver the result. I stood on that floor and felt the weight of the last 2 months settle and then, slowly, lift. Rio gave me a single nod from across the room that said everything. Then the front door opened and she walked in. Black leggings, deep blue tank, blonde hair in a simple ponytail, no clipboard, no armor, no wall. She waved at Sarah, took a towel, and came straight toward me through the morning light. "Hey, boss," she said. "Hey, boss," I said back. She reached up and straightened the collar of my shirt with 2 fingers and let her hand rest there a beat longer than necessary. Nobody looked away. Neither did we. "Personal record on deadlifts today," she said. "I need someone who knows what they're doing." "I'm available," I said. We walked to the platform together. She chalked her hands, set her stance, and pulled. Clean and strong and honest, the way she did everything. The bar came up smooth. The plates rang as she set it down. She turned around, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "How was that?" she asked. "Perfect," I said, and I meant it in every way it could possibly be meant. Thanks for watching. If this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe for more unforgettable stories about love, resilience, and second chances.